My name is Owen Symes. I'm the author of He Was Our Man in Washington, A History of the Obama Years, now out from Zero Books. I wanted to take a moment to talk about Donald Rumsfeld, who has finally met his maker. You know, he's down on hell along with all the other fun people that our political establishment has given us over the last 200 odd years. I wanted to talk about what he said in 2013. Malcolm here, one of my research assistants, pointed this out to me. In 2013, he was criticizing Obama's Syrian policy. Syria was falling apart at the time, and Rumsfeld thought that the red line Obama was talking about wasn't good enough. And he said, "You either ought to change the regime or you ought to do nothing." He quipped this. And that was a really striking statement to me because it kind of seems like there's more you could do than just destroy the country completely or ignore them, right? And this is quite a statement coming from perhaps the least successful Secretary of Defense in U.S. history. It seems to indicate a great canyon of disagreement separating this most ardent of neocons from that paragon of contemporary liberalism that is Barack Obama. But this isn't necessarily the case, and they agree on a lot more than you might think. So, realistically, the Secretary of Defense's role in the U.S. government is to not defend things, necessarily what we would consider worthy of defense, but to defend the U.S. empire, to uphold and sustain the dominance of the United States vis-a-vis its economic and diplomatic relationships with other countries. And this means many things, projecting hard power, airstrikes, marine landings, regime changes, special operations raids, but it also means the use of soft power, diplomacy, trade agreements, economic sanctions, and obviously the Defense Department is going to cooperate with the State Department and other agencies in order to use both soft and hard power. And even in the realm of force, there is kind of a nuance, right? You can do a coup instead of an invasion, a drone strike instead of an outright bombing campaign. Rumsfeld comments, his comments bespeak not only a preference for the use of hard power, but of a particular kind of hard power. The most shocking and awe-inspiring displays of U.S. military might that debt spending can buy. Back-channel diplomatic missions, the subtle arts of electronic manipulation, the slow death of an economic sanction, the penumbral precision of a Navy SEAL raid. These are not the displays of power in the way Rumsfeld would like. Better an armored division quaking the foreign soil as they grind their way to victory, the glittering panoply of all the works of the military-industrial complex. In broad daylight, making it clear to the world nothing can top the United States. Now, as it turns out, the ostentatious parade school of military strategy proved a failure. The world remembers less the columns of Abrams tanks than it does the hollow Humvees, burnt out on the roadside, less the howls of victory than the cries of post-traumatic stress, less the death of Saddam Hussein and more the millions of civilians poured into the meat grinder. So Obama swept into the Oval Office with a mandate to fix our foreign policy failures, and specifically those of his immediate predecessor. And if one reads a typical conservative opinion piece from the time, that project began with an apology tour throughout the Muslim world, years of military budget cuts, a shrinking U.S. military presence abroad, a weakening of U.S. dominance and preeminence, all in the pursuit of this kind of radical socialist agenda aimed at dismantling the United States as a country. This is what conservatives think of when they think of Obama's foreign policy. And like so much else about conservative commentary, there are particular details that are factually correct, but they're distorted by these outrage mongers to produce the kind of pernicious political myth that precludes any true appreciation of reality. So yes, the Obama administration did apologize to some countries for the very real zealotry of Bush II. Obama apologized to a number of countries in this respect, trying to kind of reset and recalibrate our relationships with the Muslim world. But this didn't mean the U.S. was interested in leaving the Muslim world to its own devices. Our military bases remained on Muslim Holy Land, our fleet still patrolled their waterways, our sanctions still cripple some of the most powerful nations, our weapons still flow into the hands of their dictators, our corporations still dominate their natural resources, particularly oil, but not just oil. So, from a defense spending perspective, yeah, during Obama's first term, mostly as a result of bringing troops home from Iraq, a decision that was agreed to by Bush II in like the tail end of his presidency, by the way. This wasn't something that Obama just did on his own. So defense spending did drop as troops came home from Iraq. But during his second term, defense spending rose again as the fight against ISIS took off, other terror groups were on the rise, as Obama spread the war on terror into Africa, as his drone campaigns grew in scale. Those all cost money. So for indeed, although U.S. troop numbers declined in many places, not Afghanistan, as Malcolm notes, Obama never ceased to defend American empire. He never ceased fighting the war on terror. It wasn't just defending American empire. He was still fighting the thing that Bush started, or at least reignited. All along, Obama had no interest in stopping Bush's crusade against evil. He merely wanted to make it more orderly, more legal, more cost-efficient, and more amenable to our allies. And this is a difference in degree, not a difference in kind. Bush's doctrine of preventative war, so furiously championed by Rumsfeld and other neocons, morphed under Obama into a doctrine of responsibility to protect. And we can see this metamorphosis very clearly if we compare Bush II's 2002 national security strategy with Obama's, which was written in 2010. So in 2002, the Bush administration said, quote, "While the United States will constantly strive to enlist the support of the international community, we will not hesitate to act alone, if necessary, to exercise our right of self-defense by acting preemptively against such terrorists to prevent them from doing harm against our people and our country." So that was 2002, George W. Bush. In 2010, Obama's national security strategy said, quote, "We will seek broad international support, working with such institutions as NATO and the UN Security Council. The United States must reserve the right to act unilaterally if necessary to defend our nation and our interests." So these are more or less the same exact statement, 8 years apart from different political parties. Yeah, we'll look for allies, but if we have to, we'll go it alone. Now, in practice, Bush was much less interested in allies than Obama was. That's a fair distinction to make on the tactical level, but strategically, in the broad realm of things, pretty much the same. If push comes to shove, Obama would have acted unilaterally had he thought it necessary. So this disagreement between the neoconservatives and the liberals boils down to an internecine dispute between two wings of the same class of people. Ultimately, their interests remain in broad alignment. They belong to the same sector of U.S. society that benefits the most from the current preeminence of the United States on the world stage. And like any family feud, the anger and resentment is real, the conflict is real. It's not like this is fake. Conservative Republicans and liberal Democrats do have what they consider to be not only legitimate disagreements, but fundamental disagreements. Like they look at it as a pretty fundamental kind of issue, but they're not. They're really not. They're all from the same gene pool. So at the end of the day, they still want the family, the U.S. empire, to succeed. None of them, not Rumsfeld or Obama, not Bush or Biden, want the American empire to collapse. And in that sense, they're all on the same side. So again, my name is Owen Symes. I'm the author of He Was Our Man in Washington, A History of the Obama Years, now out from Zero Books. If you'd like to know more about Obama's foreign policy, in particular his fighting of the war on terror, there's a whole chapter in this book about that. I don't touch much on his other avenues of pursuit, his realignment towards China, his policies in South America, things like that. I really focused on the war on terror because I wanted to try and understand if he kept fighting it, how he kept fighting it, what he was doing with the legacy of Bush II. And as it turns out, what he did was keep fighting. So if you'd like to read more about that, or the economy, healthcare, climate change, how he interacted with indigenous peoples, that's all in this book.